Watch this.
It's Friday. You know what that means? Time to go beyond the 208. Here's what we got in store for you. It was mostly quiet at the State House today as lawmakers made their way back to their home districts, except for one big piece of legislation that could impact a lot of lives. An idea to repeal Medicaid expansion was introduced. There's a lot of talk about flags in the legislature this year. While Idaho's trying to ban them,
I used to be at a point where I couldn't even have a conversation with somebody of a different opinion.
one neighborhood in Oregon isn't letting their expressions flying free get in the way of their neighborly feelings for each other.
There's nothing wrong with having a different opinion and having a neighbor with a different opinion.
A teddy bear represents comfort and care, usually held by a kid, but Washington labor and delivery nurses are handing them out to parents whose babies didn't make it through delivery, so they're taking home more than just their grief. A new pitch at the Idaho State House aims to remove the voter-approved expansion of Medicaid. Our partners at the Idaho Press did the research, and they report that 90,000 Idahoans would be impacted with the removal of health care coverage. In 2018, the people of Idaho voted in favor of expanding Medicaid for people that didn't qualify for standard Medicaid but could not afford a plan on the state health insurance. So the battle here is over cost. Critics say that expansion is costing Idaho too much money. Supporters of the expansion say that the state would be on the hook for a much larger bill without it. Already, debate centers on the fiscal note of the proposal. Which numbers are accurate depends who you ask.
I mean, as a technical matter, I think this fiscal note is entirely inaccurate. Everything that I've seen indicates that it would actually cost the state more to get rid of Medicaid expansion than it would save. This one, I just feel it would be so hurtful to so many people and is so at odds with the clearly expressed wishes of the people of Idaho that I can't support even introducing it.
She's correct. There is state data that shows eliminating the Medicaid expansion program could actually cost the state more money. Whiplash to the other side of the coin. Those who say that Idaho's Medicaid budget is well past what it was originally estimated to be.
And it said the state cost was $32 million. State cost now is $110 million. And I just don't, we're on a trajectory that I just don't think we can afford to continue. And I do think we need to take a closer look on how this is funded, what the programs are, and what we are doing with it. And so, and that's why we bring this legislation, I think, to have a closer look at how much this has gone up.
So different perspectives into the question of finances, and the committee approved the printing of the bill, so that means it will be back for a full hearing soon, probably early next week. We're diving into this subject next week and beyond. It is a very critical issue for thousands of Idahoans. All right, so what were the other big pieces of legislation out of the State House this week? We've got a recap for you at this week's Legislative Wrap. Week 3 of the 2025 legislative session kicked off with a mild day at the local level. Monday marked the inauguration of President Donald Trump. Flags at the Idaho State House were raised to full staff for the day. They had been lowered to commemorate President Jimmy Carter. Tuesday, lawmakers got rolling on two topics that failed to pass in 2024. The bill creating a mandatory minimum fine of $300 if you're found with marijuana, 3 ounces or less, with exceptions for minors. The legislation hit the House floor with more testimony against it than for.
I called home on this one. The judge that I spoke with said, leave this one alone. We need the discretion.
And if you can't pay the fine, don't do the crime.
That passed with the vote of 54-14 and now heads to the Idaho Senate. Tuesday also was a success for a proposed law expanding the Attorney General's power to investigate and prosecute elected city officials. Already, the AG can investigate elected county officials. It passed the House, now heads to a Senate committee.
This one is probably the biggest income tax cut in Idaho history.
A major day in the school tax credit debate on Wednesday. Introduction of the Idaho Parental Tax Credit The proposed law would give families up to $5,000 per student to cover private school costs, including tuition, targeting families who feel public schools in their area don't serve their students' needs. For students with disabilities, that amount would go up to $7,500.
This is a different approach, an innovative approach that allows children and teachers, candidly, flexibility to teach in ways that meet the personalized needs of each and every child.
Legislation was printed and now awaits a full committee hearing. Lawmakers in the House State Affairs Committee approved House Joint Memorial 1 on Wednesday, a strongly worded letter that, if fully passed, would be sent to the United States Supreme Court. And the message is asking them to reverse the Obergefell decision. That's the SCOTUS case that legalized same-sex marriage across the country in 2015. The sponsor says it goes beyond that.
About upholding federalism and a state's rights to make our own decisions. It is not about defining marriage.
House Speaker Mike Moyle pitched a big income tax cut on Thursday. The current flat rate for all Idahoans is 5.695%, and the legislation would take that down to a clean 5.3%. It would also see the corporate income tax shoot down by the same amount.
That makes Idaho more competitive. It puts the money back in the citizens' pockets.
Legislation was printed, now heads to a full committee consideration. Later in the day, another pitch in the school choice funding conversation, expanding the existing Empowering Parents grant. To pay for state-approved, right now, the grant cannot be used to pay for school tuition. Senator Dave Lent wants to change that. He's proposing instead of putting $50 million towards school choice, and legislators would allocate $30 million to special education in public schools, with the remaining $20 million added to the state Empowering Parents program. And that money would be allowed to be used on things like private school tuition, a change from the current format.
Great educators, love our teachers, our administrators, but they're working in a box that was created over 100 years ago.
And finally, more conversations on flags. A new flag bill was introduced by Representative Heather Scott on Thursday to put parameters on what flags can fly on state, county, or city buildings. Only the flag of the United States, state of Idaho, military, and tribal flags. And that's a legislative wrap. We continue the conversation on school choice funding this Sunday morning on Viewpoint. My guest this week, Superintendent of Public Instruction, Debbie Critchfield. A major point in the conversation about school tax credits, or whatever lawmakers eventually land on, grants, tax credits, whatever they are, accountability and transparency are huge factors. And these are things that Governor Little highlighted in his State of the State, a topic that he's earmarked $50 million for in his budget proposal. But we've heard nationally and locally from some groups that say that there should be no testing to prove accountability of tax dollars. They say parents are the one who should determine if education is working for their kids. Others criticize that. I asked Superintendent Critchfield about the concept.
I travel all over the state. Idahoans are telling me they have basic expectations for any learning environment. One, that our students are going to a safe school that doesn't have a leaky roof and the heater turns on and the window will open, when they need to have air and some of those things. And they also expect that their child's going to have learning, and every child deserves 1 year's worth of growth in 1 year's time. Well, how do we know that that's happened? Well, we test them. And then we're able to say, did it or didn't it happen? What do we need to do, or what do we do to continue to help that growth? And I think those two basic things need to apply in this conversation when we talk about paying for choice.
Superintendent Critchfield also has a pitch for changing how schools are funded by the state budget. Instead of one size fits all, they want to look at weighting funds for students who cost more, because this is the truth in the situation here. Some students in different parts of the state, they need different support than others. One size does not fit all to address funding. Join us at 9 a.m. this Sunday morning, right here on 7 for the full conversation. Before we go beyond the 208, it was a busy day here in our area. Arguments wrapped up in the Brian Kohberger DNA hearing. We have our first view of a bill banning diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you can start putting meat in your compost. Abby Davis keeps us updated on the latest in the 208 in the 411.
After 3 days of arguments, the judge in Brian Kohberger's case has to decide whether to allow key DNA evidence for his murder trial. Kohberger's attorneys argued police should have secured a search warrant before detectives analyzed DNA collected. The state does not believe collection of evidence at the crime scene or in the weeks that followed violated any of Kohberger's rights. The judge will issue his ruling another day.
That our colleges should be a place that is centered on the pursuit of truth, and that truth, pursuing truth doesn't mean that you're taught that this is the way it is.
But I don't think this is actually opening free speech.
A diversity, equity, and inclusion legislative working group voted last night to recommend a bill prohibiting DEI in higher education. Specifically prohibiting things like DEI educational activities, services, faculty or staff positions, and hiring and admissions. The bill does allow classes on diversity, but you can't make them a required course. Schools can also still provide services for students in American Indian tribes. The bill still has to be introduced in a committee. The City of Boise's compost program just got easier. You can now scrape meat, dairy, and grain products off of your plate into the city's curbside compost bin. The program's seen major success since launching in 2017. Each year, the program keeps more than 30,000 tons of organic waste out of the landfill. Shreveport Music Festival announced over 100 more artists playing at this year's festival. The list includes bands like Youth Lagoon, Frog, and Chinese American Bear. Also, our amazing KTVB editor Madison Proof is performing, so check her out. Now the grand total of artists is at 437. That's the 411 on the 208. I'm Abby Davis.
There's no denying that a transfer of power between political parties can trickle down to division in our own communities. But that's not the case for at least one neighborhood in Oregon, where they take care of each other despite the difference of opinions that their front yard flags are displaying. Well, hey there, neighbor. Happy Friday. Why don't you send us a nice message, or a critical one? Really, anything about the show. Just text us your questions, comments, concerns, really anything about or around the 208 to the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. Please remember to include your name so we can give you credit, and hashtag the 208 so we know it's for us. We'll get to as many as we can live at the end of the show. All right, let's go beyond. And our first stop beyond the 208, we are taking you to one neighborhood in Milwaukee, Oregon, full of flags flying in honor of very different political views. But as Thomas Schultz from our sister station in Portland found, the people living there don't let politics get in the way of being a good neighbor.
If life is full of challenges, talking politics tops the list.
Morning.
Especially with someone you disagree with.
I like my opinion, and I like to advertise it.
To an advertiser, Dan Wagner's Milwaukee Corner house is a gold mine.
And so I have a whole trunk full of flags.
And for years, he's dotted the skyline.
The guy in the Navy showed me how to do this the right way. So that's the bottom.
with his opinion.
And that's the top. This is a good one. There you go.
His neighbors are all too aware of Dan's thoughts.
It is a landmark. I mean, if you're trying to give direction, I was like, do you know the Trump House?
And it's not hard to tell where they stand.
It was important to get that flag up.
Amanda DeMann and her wife added a Black Lives Matter flag a few years ago.
It's not as playful as the rainbow, and not as colorful as like the gay one down the street, but it's still...
It says a lot. It says a lot.
It means a lot to us.
Yeah.
After Amanda saw a young black boy being called racial slurs by a handful of white kids in their neighborhood.
And I was like, absolutely not. Like, it got really parental, and I was like, we don't talk like that around here.
Neighbors heard about the encounter. One reached out.
Dan checks on us a lot. Like, he really is looking out for everybody.
He looks out for everybody.
So, yeah, they're not going to be home right now.
Down his street, too.
Far left, far right, and then somewhere in the middle.
Like Matthew Schuster. A year ago,
Hey, brother.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah.
Matthew planted a pro-Palestine flag in his front yard.
Just for me, it got to a point where it's like, I felt I had to. I felt I had to.
Matthews lived in the neighborhood for a couple of years.
I used to be at a point where I couldn't even have a conversation with somebody of a different opinion.
For more than a year, he never spoke to his Trump-supporting neighbor. But over the summer, after an assassination attempt on Trump's life,
he was concerned about my safety.
Matthew spoke to Dan for the first time.
We need to come together. We need to see each other as human beings and not be scared of ideas.
There's nothing wrong with having a different opinion and having a neighbor with a different opinion.
Dan says he's received threats because of his flags. He's warned neighbors they may receive them too.
I think everybody is just so used to seeing with this administration right now, the division, and it's just not like that here.
He's helped me turn the water main off, offered me gas. I've definitely drank beers with him.
To some, beers across the aisle amount to treason. But this
He's funny.
Isn't D.C.
He's a very good neighbor. He's a really great neighbor.
Yeah, you won't hear me say anything negative about Dan.
Even if a flag of Trump, dressed as Rambo,
He wishes.
waves overhead.
It's our favorite.
In Milwaukee,
I think we could be an example.
Thomas Schultz,
We're still neighbors at the end of the day.
KGW News.
I hope this bear brings comfort to family that needs it.
For Washington families who walk out of the labor and delivery unit without their baby, but then the labor and delivery nurses ran out of teddy bears until an outpouring of support came to the nurses giving their support to families. How can we support you or your community? Text us at 208-321-5614 with your name and hashtag the 208. Tune in at the end of the show to see your comments live. Labor and delivery nurses at Multicare Good Samaritan Hospital in Puyallup, Washington are overwhelmed with gratitude after the community donated nearly 800 teddy bears. Those teddy bears are given to families who experience infant loss to make sure they don't grieve alone. Madison Wade from our sister station in Seattle explains.
A familiar lullaby fills the labor and delivery halls at Multicare Good Samaritan Hospital in Puyallup. The song is a sign a baby was born. While there's much to celebrate, sometimes the song does not play, as families face an unthinkable reality that their baby did not make it.
It's very common, unfortunately, to have a loss or a miscarriage.
The nurses here don't want families experiencing loss to feel alone, which is why they decided to create teddies for tinies. Every family suffering a loss is gifted a teddy bear.
Although it's not their baby, it's something that we can give them so that they have a remembrance of such a dark time that took place in their life, but also that can give them hope.
Recently, their supply ran out, so another nurse.
It was a very innocent, naive idea.
Rayleigh Korzanetsky posted an Amazon wish list online and it went viral. Donations started pouring in.
From that moment on, the next 4 days, it was just unstoppable with how many teddy bears showed up on her porch.
Nearly 800 bears and counting were delivered from all over the country, with many people sharing why they donated.
I hope this bear brings comfort to family that needs it.
Every bear represents love, support, and hope.
I couldn't ask for more. Sorry, I just have no words. An incredible community answered something I never thought would turn into what it is.
These teddy bears are going to touch so many lives.
These nurses hope they won't have to give them out, but they're ready in case they have to.
Those are the deliveries that I'm never going to forget. I will always remember those patients, their story, and when I think about why I became a nurse, I'm like, those families, that is my why. I'm speechless, honestly, that a community came and rallied behind such a vulnerable ask.
In Puyallup, Madison Wade, King 5 News.
All right, after a cold start this morning that brought a few light snow flurries to portions of southern Idaho, we have enjoyed blue sky over the region. We're in the upper 30s right now in Boise, dipping down close to the freezing mark in Twin Falls, and we're in the mid-20s in the mountains with some beautiful sunsets taking shape across the region. Tomorrow morning will be cold again. Sunday morning, colder still, enough so that there is actually a cold weather advisory that's been issued for the Camas Prairie starting early tomorrow morning, in place through Monday morning, for the potential of wind chills, which is the air temperature, of course, combined with the wind, as low as 30 degrees below zero. So, while we won't be that cold here in the Treasure Valley tomorrow morning, it will be frosty. We'll dip down to 20 early on our Saturday morning, 18 tomorrow morning for Mountain Home, into the teens for the Twin Falls areas, single digits or below zero for most of our mountain locations. Plenty of sunshine on deck tomorrow, but our high temperatures will drop a bit as we get some Arctic air trickling in from the north. So generally mid to upper 30s across the Treasure Valley, just upper 20s for all of you in the Magic Valley. A very cold kickoff to our final weekend of January. Sunshine holds steady long term, and you can see temperatures moderate in those mid 30s through most of next week. Our next real chance of precipitation comes in next Friday, with snow finally, hopefully, making a return to Idaho's mountains.
To the Comment-tron 7000 to end the week here. Let's see what you had to say. Mike in Meridian, he says, I'm not bothered by a neighbor flying a flag that differs from my opinion. However, it's an issue when the flag is offensive with vulgar language, and mine and other kids can see it every day just wrong. I think I know exactly what type of flag you're referring to there, Mike. Maggie in Twin Falls says, imagine what we could do in our public schools with an additional $50 million. Putting it toward private schools won't help all our students. I wonder how many of the legislators who say our schools are broken have actually been in the schools. Maggie, it's a great question. I know that lawmakers have been asked to go visit some schools. Some have, some haven't. Frank in Nampa writes, we can't afford Medicaid, but we can subsidize lawmakers and others to send their kids to private school. Something is wrong with this picture. It's a good comment, Frank. We'll see what lawmakers say about it. And Carol says, I'm old enough to remember Idaho before Medicaid expansion. Hundreds of Idahoans died every year because they couldn't afford insurance. We're going to dive into this next week. It is complicated but critical.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.